Hey guys, welcome back to Honey in the Rock, episode 79. I'm Sophie, and today I have such a fun guest. This is Maddie.
Hello.
Um, so we were just talking a little bit, but I found her on social media and then I followed her, and sometimes I think it's hard to know who to follow on social media and what is do they love Jesus? Are they just posting things? But as I continue to follow her, she was just so faithful to what the Lord was honestly just putting on her heart. So I reached out and asked her to be a guest, and here we are now. So I'm so honored that you're here, and I'm so excited.
Me too. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Where are you from?
I am from actually California.
Okay.
I was raised in the San Francisco Bay Area, but I live now in St. Louis, Missouri, that area.
Yeah.
And as we talk a little, I'll unravel
Yes.
that story a bit. But from California, living in Missouri
Yes.
now.
It's sweet to see, from my podcast kind of started, it's just literally my mom is on the podcast or a
Sure.
lady from church, and they're so good. So now it's fun for me to hear, where are people from.
Yeah.
So we'll just dive right in, and you can start sharing your testimony. I might budge in at random points if I want to say something, but
Perfect. Okay. I'm going to give you a brief, like I told you before, I could go in so many different directions with this. And I was really praying to just ask God to guide me what part kind of He wanted me to lead you through. And so I'll start a little from the beginning just by saying I was raised as a pastor's kid, a PK for those of you who are as well, you know that term. And I know this is not everyone's story that has been raised in a pastor's home, but I'm so glad to say that I was raised in a ministry home where there was a truly healthy biblical model of God, family, and then the church and ministry. And just had amazing parents. I'm the oldest of five siblings. And we just had a beautiful upbringing of just serving the church, loving people, loving family. And I think it's really from that place of just seeing it modeled so beautifully in my life. And then also the Lord speaking to my heart of just, I feel like from a very young age, I felt called to vocational ministry. And we hear it talked about a lot. All of us are called to ministry in some capacity, but I really felt that stirring. Early, and also just had a heart for Jesus and for the
Right.
church. And so again, just kind of started there. And I think through that, this wasn't something that was taught, but it was something that just gradually moving through life. I realized looking back at the time, it's hard to see, but especially being a young teenager, I struggled a lot with fear and insecurity. Those were two things that I navigated a ton. And so I think what ended up happening was I started to value ministry more than I really valued my relationship with Jesus. And I truly loved him and wanted to honor him, but I clung to the things that made me feel tangible value. And so things that got me seen, things that people applauded. And so I kind of went on this journey of like, Lord, what can I do for you? What can I do for you? What can I do for you? And that kind of started a series again of life just being a little bit out of balance in that, I think. And it starts with good intentions.
Right.
And I think something that I'm so passionate about talking about is like you can be doing a really good thing, but God be in the wrong place. And it just becomes something that needs to, those priorities needing to be readjusted. And so what I found is just, and I think this is a lot of people's story, is I looked for value in what I could do for God. And
Right.
even in friendships, and it wasn't, again, necessarily bad things, but just not where my source of satisfaction and security should be found. And so moving along a little, my parents told me sort of abruptly, me and my family, they are from this area. Now they're from St. Louis.
Yeah.
Again, we lived in California at the time, and they had come here to visit family, and then come back and let me and my siblings and I know that we were going to be moving to St. Louis, and it was happening rapidly.
Right.
There were just some changes happening in the area we were in, and they felt that the Lord was calling them here,
Yeah.
and that knocked me off my feet, to say the least. It was like a hard time in life anyways, being like a teenager, a young
Yeah.
teenager, and just again insecurity and identity and all the things.
Right.
But everything in my life was about to change.
Yeah.
Everything that I knew, everything I found value in, my normal. And it was in that time that I realized I have a really bad relationship with change, and I think a lot
Yeah.
of people can resonate to that. But I cling to comfort. I cling to being around those who know me and who I know, and just being in that normal rhythm of life. And this is, even looking back, probably the most shaping experience of my life. I was truly devastated, and that's something that not a lot of people understand until you experience, I think, because it was also out of my control. You know, I was a child, so it wasn't like I was like, I'm gonna stay here and you're gonna go. It was like, no, this is where God is leading our family. And so we did it with me kicking and screaming. I truly was a different person through this period of time. I didn't understand how this could be, where God was leading us. And so we moved to St. Louis, and again, just such a hard, I can't even put into words. I tell my mom all the time now, looking back, there's a lot of things I like block out of, I think I've like blocked out of my memory, because it was just such a, for me at the time, such a traumatic thing. And I
Right.
can laugh at it looking back. But again, at the time, it was like an uprooting. I was just uprooted out of
Yeah.
everything I knew. And with that came where I had placed my identity.
Right. Right.
That being in my school, in my church, and all of those things, even in the state that I lived in.
Literally.
And so we got here, and life was totally different. And I felt really left with the ashes. I didn't have friends. People didn't know me other than the family that we had here. And looking back, it was one of the most heartbreaking things I experienced, but I can't imagine where I would be without it now, because it was at that time that I really realized that, like, through all of the changes in life and the unknowns and the things that we can't control, he was my only constant. And at
Right.
that time, he truly was my closest friend. And so I could either choose to trust that his plan was good, and that
Yeah.
these truths that I had learned from a little girl in Sunday school,
Right.
were true, and that he was going to be faithful, or
Yeah.
I would run from him and truly have nothing, have no hope, have
Yeah.
no. And so I can't say I modeled it beautifully, but I can say that he met me in my brokenness there.
Right.
And that started, even as I was praying today about what I would share. I had never really thought of it like this, but it really was that brokenness that like birthed my passion
Yeah.
for Jesus first, to
Yeah.
pursue him and for him to take his rightful place,
Yeah.
because I wasn't Maddie, the pastor's daughter, anymore. I wasn't Maddie, the girl that was in my friend group at school. I wasn't Maddie, who was known for these things and who was doing, leading worship in kids' church, whatever it was. And it was just me and God, and me saying, Lord, what are you doing? I felt even, and I wasn't, but I felt even betrayed by my parents. I was like, what are you guys doing? Like,
Right. Right.
of parents that I loved and had always done what was best for me. I just couldn't imagine, um, again, what would come of this.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy to say that I did turn to the Lord,
Yeah.
and he, from that place, has been so gracious to remind me and teach me from that point that what I do for him has to come from a place of first dwelling in him. And that's something that I think that especially our culture right now, even and especially Christian culture, has that so wrong. We pursue all of the things that tell us who we are, or what we can do to receive recognition or value. And we forget that everything that he came for was like relationship with us,
Right.
and for us to follow him. And you can't follow someone, and you won't follow someone that you don't trust.
No.
And you really can't trust someone that you don't know.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
realized I knew and I had a heart for the Lord, but I didn't really, really, really know him like deeply
Yeah.
and personally, because
Right.
he was pursuing me, but I wasn't really returning that. I was going to all of, Jesus again, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And so he allowed me to be broken to put me back together in with the proper priorities,
Right.
you
Which
know.
is sweet. Right.
And that changed everything. And again, it was and has been a journey. But I always think of like, what would I tell Maddie at that time, who again just felt like I felt like life was over. And
Yeah,
again, looking back at something I can kind of laugh about,
right,
but it felt like, where are we going, Lord? What are you doing? How
yes,
can good things come from this?
right,
And I would just tell her like, abide in Jesus,
mm,
abide in Jesus,
yeah,
abide in Jesus,
yeah,
because it's from that place that he truly will redeem and will order your steps, but it has to start with him first. And so just going from that place, I start on a journey of, okay, Lord, you're my constant, you're my
right,
closest friend. Even though I can't see it, I have to trust that you are going to make something beautiful of this. And it was a slow
yeah,
process.
yeah,
But it was also at that time that I developed a passion for writing. I started blogging, Instagram before it was the cool thing to do. And it was kind of my way of processing. I shared about what God was teaching me in my brokenness, shared about what God was teaching me in my transition. And funny enough, I grew a very large following. I was 15 at the time. I want to say I could be a little bit off.
right,
But I think that started to creep in a little too, to like the finding value in the wrong thing.
yes,
And
right,
so I had grown this following, and I actually came to a place where my parents were like, I think it's better that we shelf this right now. And so I deleted my account. I had received some bullying even from some people back home, and it really just, it wasn't healthy.
no,
But that passion was birthed to like share my experience, to like point people to Christ. And I
right,
knew that that wasn't the end of it.
yeah, right,
And so again, went through high school. Wasn't my favorite place to be, but you know, I did it, and Jesus carried me through. And I truly believe that I was able to like be a light to people there and to learn what it looked like
mm,
to like live set apart and stand
yeah,
out, even when it's hard. I went away to college. To pursue a degree in ministry.
yeah,
Went for my first semester and felt their release to start sharing on social media again. I felt like or
yeah,
God really revealed to me, like I knew who I was.
yeah,
And again, he wasn't done using that. And so I opened my account, which the one that's there now. And I've stuck to steadfastness in it. Just ask God, what do you want me to share? But then also not just sharing on social media, but living a faithful life,
right,
right? What we post should be a reflection of what we're living, if
yes,
we feel called to stewarding that space.
yeah,
And it was a beautiful thing. He kind of
mm,
organically grew that again as well. And I actually started receiving invitations to start speaking,
mm,
doing different things, and
right,
to the point where I decided,
okay, who's the
okay,
dog?
Kai, hey, shh, 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 shh. Come here, bub. Buddy, it's okay. I started, or I decided to step away from college my first semester,
Yeah,
and go to school online, at
mm,
home. But again, I was just going to be out of town so much and different
right,
things. And so I was doing that, and I thought, surely, Lord, this is what you're like. Life's going to take off. This is so, and then COVID happened. Then
okay,
came
yeah,
COVID. And so again, it's just been this journey of like, Jesus just continually reminding me, like, keep the main thing the main thing. And if things shift and change, and
right,
opportunities are beautiful, but again, at any moment, if you're finding your value in what can be taken away so quickly and not in me, you're going to be left just totally devastated and disoriented and thinking, life is over. My calling is over. What are you doing, God? And so I feel like from that transition of moving, it's really taught me, in the unknown. And again, when life just takes a turn that I didn't expect, to say, like, I still have my constant and I still know who I am. And because of whose I am, and we hear that a lot. And I think we've become so numb to some of those sayings that we deem cliche, but it's
yeah,
so true, because who we are isn't in who we are, it's in who he is.
yeah,
And when we deem that cliche, then we don't live by it. And so it's been like, Jesus, keep bringing me back to those simple truths. When life devastates me, when people come and go, I've experienced a lot of that. Through the pain of life, like, we learn more of who he is, and
yeah,
that is the beauty. And
mm,
so of course we all know like what COVID was like. It wasn't any different for me. It caused a tuck away and isolation,
right,
but again, it allowed me an opportunity to just continue to seek him and to
right,
abide and
yeah,
say, when life isn't what I thought or expected, and I can't really identify what you're
mm,
doing, you have been faithful, and I
right,
know that that's true.
yeah,
And so his grace has has continued to carry me. I've kind of shared with you even my process with social media or that calling to ministry. It's
Yeah.
been something that he's guided me so steadily. But I'm so thankful for that because it's allowed me to keep him where he belongs
Yeah.
and
Right.
to just be reminded again that my value isn't in what I do for God, but it's
Right.
found in my ability to continue to like dwell in him. And that's what his word invites us to do, is
Yes.
to dwell in him, to follow him, to
Right.
walk in relationship with him. And I've just continued to stay the course. My mom always says, I remember one for my 21st birthday, we had a party and my mom talked to the people who were there and I cling to the words that she said, but she said like, if I kind of gave a theme for Maddie's life, it would be just one step of obedience after
Mm.
another. And my human tendency is to want to know the full story and
Right.
to know where I'm going next or
Yeah.
what he's going to allow me to do for him or all of these things. But he invites us all in this unique journey of what we need to
Yes.
know him and to follow him. And it's a step by step, like, okay, Lord, I'm going to be obedient first to abiding in and trusting you,
Right.
and you really will like unravel your plan from that point.
Yes.
And so it's just been a continuation to be faithful. I serve at my local church now as the worship
Right.
leader, which is such a blessing. My dad now pastors again, and so that's been an awesome like
Right.
full
Yes.
circle thing. And I now see like that move was one of the most amazing gifts.
Right. Yes.
I always say like I can't imagine who I would be if I had not experienced that. Being
Right.
able to grow up now around family who
Right.
loves Jesus and all of those things, and then the opportunity to work with Sadie that kind of came up through COVID.
Yes.
It was like a day that I was feeling really down. Like God, I just feel like nothing's going anywhere. Like I really feel like I'm doing what you've called me to do, and it feels just kind of stagnant. But his call to me has always been just like remain constant, remain
Right.
faithful. And they messaged me at one point and just talked about an opportunity to write for them, which has been such a sweet gift. Again, another one of those things that's like to be so celebrated, amazing, but like it's all because of him and for him. And if it
Right.
wasn't, then it wouldn't be worth it. And then through that, this within the last year and a half, God's opened a door for me to write a book, which was always something that was like maybe in the back of my mind, but I'm like, I don't know where to begin. I don't know the technicalities of this world or what. And I had just been, it was a season that I had been praying, Lord,
Yeah.
what is it that you have, what does
Right.
it look like? I was working just kind of a normal job, if you
Yeah.
will,
Yeah.
and again then serving at the church. And I had a friend that connected me with a friend of hers, which sort of started that journey. And God has just in a different way than I would have done it, but
Yeah.
always been so faithful to like just exceed my
Right.
expectations.
Right.
And that's specifically what I'm kind of focused on right now, is just being faithful in the everyday and then working on being able to actually like have a book published, which
Right.
again, not saying it was never in the back of my mind, but it was never some, I was like, I don't even
Right.
know the steps of pursuing that, and where God has just been like, here you go. Like, so long story short, that kind of catches me up to right now. But I
Yeah.
would just say my life is like my testimony truly is his faithfulness.
Right.
And it's that his word, like applied to our life, actually works. Like it actually
Right.
delivers.
Yes.
And it's not in our understanding or again our way of doing things, but
Right. Yeah.
he's been faithful to me. And like that is something that like no one can take from me,
Right.
that the world cannot take
Right.
from me. Like
This
I
is
have undeniably seen his goodness. And
right.
so I live to tell the story,
Yes.
and point others to the one who's been faithful to
I
me.
love
So
I feel like this you were just like speaking straight to me. This is like so many things that have just been going through my brain. So, I know this was so good for me to hear, and I know everyone listening is like, "Oh, that's good. That's so
mm,
good." But I really do love how God takes something that's hard,
yeah,
and whether it's just a move or something
yeah,
completely different, He makes something that's hard in your own life and turns it to the good, and He also reveals these things. And so it was like, um, in a book I'm reading with my mentor last week, it literally was talking about like these hard things reveal the inner parts of your
yes,
heart. And it's like, okay, this change happened or this hard thing happened, and it revealed, where's your identity? Where's your
yeah,
hope placed in?
mm-hmm,
why are you doing the things that you're doing? And that's not a bad thing. And then you get to work through that. So it's like, oh, I am putting my identity in
Yeah.
this, even though I'm trying,
Yes.
my heart is for Jesus. And I
Yes.
think often we, at least I do, I get boggled down with like, oh, well, I'm doing this for Jesus. Like, often
Mm-hmm.
my heart's in the right place. But
Right.
sometimes we have fleshly desires that's like, wait,
Right.
I'm not doing this to make my name known. I'm not doing this so the
Right.
people at church think, good job,
Mm-hmm.
Maddie, good,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so I think that's such a good reminder that even when you're a believer, even when your heart is for
Yeah.
Jesus, it's not about what we can do for him. It's about what he already did for us. And
Yes.
then how do we respond?
Yeah.
How do we respond to that?
Yeah.
And just like keeping the first thing first, which is
Yeah.
Jesus. That's what you said, like dwell in him first,
Yeah.
abide in this first.
Mm-hmm.
And then the obedience is going to come out of love.
Yes.
And it's not going to be okay, what does God need me to
Right.
do? Does
Yeah.
God need anything from me?
Right.
But he uses us as vessels, which is just so sweet of him.
Yes.
So I think that's really sweet of your story, just the reminder, like we can be believers and still, have our identity in
Yeah.
the right place, even though we want it to be in the right place.
Yeah.
And we can pray and ask God to help us in that, and have people surround you and be like, "Hey,
Right.
you're going down the wrong path.
Yes.
You're getting too focused on this." Um, and I really do like that like when you respected your parents' authority of
Mhm.
when they're like, you need to get off of social media right now. This isn't
Yeah.
healthy. This isn't safe for you right now, and that you did. But then the Lord was able to bring it back, and
Yeah.
shows that like it's so important to respect authority, but then also Jesus is still in control.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
when the time is right, He will
Yeah.
be known.
Right.
The time was right again, and so I think that's sweet.
Mm-hmm.
But I just love so before we hopped on the call, I was reading the blog post that you did for
Mm-hmm.
Live Original, and it was about the like purpose and insecurities. And I was just like reading it, and I was like, wait, this is so good. And you're talking about Jeremiah, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
whoa, like I feel like I just copy and paste this and print this out. And I was like, I wonder in my head, I was like, I wonder if this is a part of her story. Or if
Mm.
this is just something like she's seen. But then now it's so sweet to like hear your story and
Yeah.
be like, she was sharing that advice from a place of
Yeah.
what the Lord taught her in her own
Mm-hmm.
walk with Jesus.
Yeah.
So I just think that was so cool. Um, that like went together, and then with
Yeah.
what you've been praying about to talk about.
Definitely.
So
That
that's
came from one of those days I was actually reading through the Bible. I was gonna like do the Bible in a year last year. I had never done it. And then it was so crazy because it turned in I actually just finished yesterday or the day before.
yes,
But I had read it. That was something I had read many times. And I think that's another thing as believers that have like grown up in the church, we can think so quickly like I've heard that before or I've read that before or even something that we've heard like a million times, even back to those like cliche things.
yes,
But it's like, are you living in those simple truths though?
right,
Just
right,
because you've heard it, that's fine. But like, can you look at your life and say, like, I'm truly living that? Or it truly is my heart's desire to live that? Because the
right,
Lord is so gracious in all this too. And that is something like I come back to as well. Like, He does know our heart. And
yes,
that's something I've gotten so caught up in sometimes, like, oh, Jesus, I'm so, like, I'm feeling so bad, so discouraged. So, like, my intentions are wrong in that. And He's like, that's okay. Let's keep walking. Like
right,
let's just he lovingly corrects and redirects us, and
yes,
he sees our heart's desire to follow him. And I think that's something people get caught up in a lot. But I opened Jeremiah and it was literally in that first chapter. And I was like, wow, this
right,
is something that I constantly
yes,
wrestle with, of thinking that it's somehow first trying to talk God out of what he's calling me
right,
to. Like in kind of it's like a false humility, or like, I can't, no, you couldn't use me, God, because
yes, yes,
someone else would be so much better for this, or I just, but it's really just trying to get out of, out of fear, out of
yeah,
insecurity.
yeah,
But when the Lord, like, just the fact that God didn't affirm that in Jeremiah, he wasn't like, okay, yes, I'm going to like clap for your insecurity. He was like, no,
right,
I'm
like,
calling you. But the hope was like, it's not in your might to perform my word. Like you said, like, I'm just using you
that's so
as um hey, sorry, dog sees the mailman.
the mailman.
Just the fact that like willingly, like you said earlier, like uses us
Yeah,
as a vessel, but it's ultimately up to him to perform his word.
right.
And so
Yeah,
that was another thing I lived under so much of, like this pressure, thinking like, what if
yes,
I do the right things or do what you're calling me to do and then it doesn't deliver like how I thought or how I hoped? And he's like,
right,
that's not yours to carry or to worry about. You just be faithful. You know,
it's
you just do what I've called you to do. Yeah,
right.
it
And then
does.
what if it was the other way around? What if it was
Right.
based off of what I could do, and if I mess up one time, then God's plan is completely ruined? Like,
Right.
that would stink.
Yes.
And, it's actually such a good thing and such a blessing that God is the one in control and God is the one who's leading each way, because if it was up to us, we'd be
Yeah.
all over the place.
Right.
And so
His
instead,
word wouldn't be fulfilled
yeah,
ultimately.
yes, that's so good. Um, well, listen, I'm so excited. I'm so excited for your book. I can't wait to read it.
Yes.
Um, and just all the things that you're doing, it's like so encouraging. And I think often sometimes it's hard, like growing up in a Christian household, and even as you, a pastor's kid, and just this idea of like, oh, I already know that, or like
Yeah.
just what you're saying. And I think that we have to not forget the importance of who God is, and especially as
Yeah.
Easter's coming up, like not to
Yes.
be toned down of like, oh, Easter, yeah, like Jesus died on the cross. Like, no, this is a big deal, and
Yes.
not just like numb the things down because we've
Yeah.
heard it our whole life. Because I think that is something I'll see sometimes in people who didn't grow up in a
Mhm.
household of Christians. Sometimes it seems like their fire burns a
Mhm.
little brighter because there's this like newness to everything.
Yeah.
When I think people who grew up believers
Mm.
instead look at the faithfulness of Jesus through these
Yeah.
generations and his loyalty to that. Instead, like
Mm.
celebrate that and find the newness of his word
Yeah.
and this living, breathing, active word. And so I think that there's such sweetness in that. That like
Yeah.
you got to grow up in a Christian household. I got to grow up in a Christian
Yes.
household. And now when these hard things comes, we have these things deep down. It's
Mhm.
like, oh, remember when my Sunday school teacher in second grade taught me that?
Yeah.
Or remember when I saw this old man show up to church every single Sunday? Just like sweetness of that. So
Yes.
I love what you're doing. I also love that you said that you're involved in your local church. I
Mhm.
think sometimes um, it's hard to, I think people forget that it's so important to be involved in
Yeah.
a local church. And then, like, even on social media, it's like, oh, I'm on social media, or I watch it at home, or
Yeah.
um, might do something else. But it's just so important to be
Yep.
involved and invested in a local Bible believing church. And so it
Yeah.
was really encouraging to hear that you're
Mhm.
working with the big Christian, influences in our world, and you kind of got it together in this sense of,
Sure.
you know what I mean, by just
Mhm.
like writing and having it going. But it's like to keep the first thing first,
Yep.
to dwell on Him well, to abide in Him well, is to
Mhm.
be involved in a local church. So
Yeah.
I like that part as well.
Mm.
But this
Sweet.
was so sweet. Do you have anything else, last minute things? But I feel
Hmm.
like I shared some. So I'm gonna be listening to this back and taking notes because
I'm trying
this
to
was so
think real
good.
quick of what I let me read. I took note of it, but I was trying to decide where exactly I wanted to. Um, something in this season specifically that I have come back to that I would just encourage everyone with, and I'm going to read it from here so I don't
Please.
mess it up. But Psalm 37:23 through 24 says, "The Lord directs the steps of the godly. He delights in every detail of their lives. Though they stumble, they will never fall, for the Lord holds them by the hand." And I think that would be my encouragement. I think it's easy to, especially just speaking to people who have grown up as a Christian, or to even think like, I don't have a testimony, or I don't. But your testimony is that, like, as you follow him, he is ordering your steps, and his word literally says that he delights in every detail of your life. And
Wow.
so in discouragement and in victory and in all of the in-between things, that is a truth that in this season I have come back to. Like, he directs my every steps. Again, even what we learned in Jeremiah, like
Right?
he is performing his word not just in the world, but like in my individual life. And that is a promise that, like, every day I get to hold fast to.
Right.
And so I think that would be the encouragement this season that I would leave people with, and just saying like, keep following him and he'll be
Yeah.
faithful. And again, it sounds cliche, but he will deliver
Yeah.
as he
They
promised.
say for a
So
reason.
yeah.
They said a lot for a reason because it is true and it is something we need to remind. That
Yeah.
is so good. Well, thank you for coming on.
Thank
Um,
you so much for having me.
And thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye, guys.